The galaxy had achieved perfection in nutritional science approximately 4,000 standard cycles ago, which was right around the time someone decided that actually tasting your food was an unnecessary luxury, much like having a personality or enjoying sunsets. The nutritional synthesis compact of cycle 7842 had standardized sustenance across 700 member species, reducing the chaotic mess of eating into a streamlined process that took exactly 4.2 minutes per meal cycle. Efficient, sterile, utterly devoid of joy, but who was counting? Every ship, station and settlement from the Corvax Nebula to the trailing arm possessed industrial-grade synthesizers that converted base proteins, carbohydrates, and essential minerals into perfectly balanced nutrition blocks. Gray ones for morning consumption, beige ones for midday, slightly darker beige for evening. They all tasted like regret mixed with compressed air, but they kept you alive. And wasn't that the point? The idea that anyone would manually prepare sustenance, actually touching raw ingredients and applying heat through combustion, was the sort of thing civilized species discussed in xenoanthropology courses under the heading Behaviors We're Grateful We Evolved Past. Humans, naturally, hadn't gotten the memo, or they'd gotten it and used it to light one of their bizarre recreational fires. The cargo hauler Prophet's Edge was not a vessel that inspired poetry. She was 300 meters of utilitarian bulk, designed by committee and built by the lowest bidder, sporting all the aesthetic appeal of a filing cabinet that had been kicked down several flights of stairs. Her hull bore scars from 40 cycles of service, and her interior smelled perpetually of recycled air, lubricant, and the collective resignation of her crew. She hauled containers from production worlds to distribution hubs, asked no questions, and paid just enough to keep her crew from mutiny. Barely. Captain Vexthor occupied the command chair with the enthusiasm of someone attending their own funeral. His Krillian physiology, chitinous plating, compound eyes and mandibles that clicked when he was annoyed, which was always made him look permanently aggressive, even when experiencing his closest approximation of joy. He'd been hauling cargo for 23 cycles, and each one had carved another layer of cynicism into his carapace. His philosophy was simple: deliver cargo, collect payment, don't get shot at more than twice per rotation, and absolutely never, under any circumstances, become emotionally attached to crew members because they always left for better opportunities. Navigator Plezik occupied the sensor station, their gelatinous Glorthian body undulating with nervous energy inside the containment suit that prevented them from oozing into the ship's circuitry. They'd been calculating jump trajectories for Vexthor for 6 cycles and spent most of their time worrying about things that had a 0.003% chance of occurring. Asteroid strikes, pirate raids, synthesizer malfunctions, the heat death of the universe. That weird noise the port engine made every third rotation that the engineer kept insisting was totally normal. Engineer Rothmack emerged from the lower decks trailing the scent of ozone and profanity. The stone vein species were silicon-based, which meant Rothmack resembled an ambulatory boulder with anger management issues. Crystalline formations jutted from his shoulders, and his voice sounded like gravel being processed through industrial machinery. He'd been maintaining the Prophet's Edge for 8 cycles, which he considered 7 cycles too long, and he treated the ship's systems with the tender affection of a drill sergeant addressing new recruits. Then there was the human. Marcus Webb had signed on 4 months ago at Outpost Tarsus, and Vexthor still hadn't determined if hiring him was brilliant or catastrophically stupid. Humans were the galaxy's newest members, having barely achieved faster-than-light capability before enthusiastically throwing themselves into interstellar commerce with the strategic planning of toddlers in a gravity-free candy store. They were weird. They formed emotional attachments to inanimate objects. They named their vehicles. They told stories for entertainment instead of just accessing data files like normal beings. They kept plants in their quarters for no economically justifiable reason. Marcus worked cargo specialist, which meant he operated the loading systems, maintained inventory, and somehow remained aggressively cheerful despite working conditions that would drive most species to philosophical despair. He was average height for his species, with dark hair perpetually disarrayed, skin several shades lighter than the brown shipping containers he spent his days organizing, and an expression of permanent mild amusement, as if the universe was telling him jokes nobody else could hear. "Morning, Captain," Marcus said, arriving on the bridge with 2 cups of synthesized beverage. He handed one to Vexthor, who accepted it with a mandible click of acknowledgement. "It's been morning for 6 hours, Webb. You're aware we operate on station standard time." "Sure, but I just woke up, so it's morning for me." "Time is relative. Einstein said that. Or maybe it was some Glurthian philosopher. Physics gets weird." Vexthor would have sighed if his respiratory system worked that way. Instead, he produced a clicking sound that conveyed existential fatigue. They were 17 days into a 28-day run hauling industrial components to the fringe colonies when the universe decided that efficiency was boring and chaos was more entertaining. The solar flare warning came exactly 4 seconds before the flare itself, which was, Pleasic would later note, 4 seconds too few to do anything useful except experience preemptive panic. The Prophet's Edge shuddered as electromagnetic radiation slammed into her port side, and every non-essential system immediately shut down with a series of electronic protests. "Shields holding," Pleasic announced, their gelatinous body rippling with stress. "Hull integrity at 92%. We're venting atmosphere from secondary storage, power fluctuating across decks 3 and 4. Rothmek's voice crackled through comms, creative profanity echoing from engineering. The secondary plasma conduit just melted into modern art. "Give me 2 hours and I can reroute through the... Oh, you've got to be kidding me." "Engineering?" Vexthor's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Report." The flare surge overloaded the environmental control on Deck 3. The temperature regulators failed. "Captain, the synthesizer bay is cooking at 90 degrees standard." A cold sensation spread through Vexthor's thorax. "The food storage." "Checking now." A pause that lasted several heartbeats too long. Yeah, no, we're completely screwed." The heat compromised the preservation matrices. Every single nutrition block just became a biological hazard. The synthesizer itself is offline. Looks like the protein matrix crystallized in the heat. "I can fix it, but we're talking 8, maybe 10 days minimum, and that's if I don't sleep and nothing else explodes." Pleasic made a sound like water circling a drain. "Captain, we're 3 weeks from the nearest station. Our emergency rations were in that bay. All of them." Mathematics was a cruel mistress. 4 crew members, standard nutrition requirements, 0 food supplies, 21 days of travel time. They were going to starve in the infinite void while hauling 17 tons of prefabricated housing components. The irony was so thick you could serve it in the beige nutrition blocks they no longer possessed. "We could enter hibernation," Pleasic suggested, their voice carrying the optimism of someone proposing a plan they knew wouldn't work. "Glorthians can hibernate," Vexthor said. "Krillians can survive 2 weeks without food if we ration our internal reserves. Stonevein can enter dormancy for a month. His compound eyes focused on Marcus, who was leaning against the bulkhead with his arms crossed. Humans require regular caloric intake, approximately 2,000 calories per solar day. Webb would be dead in 9 days. Well, Marcus said, his tone so casual it bordered on offensive. That would really mess up my weekend plans. This isn't amusing, human. Didn't say it was. But panicking isn't going to make food materialize. Marcus pushed off from the wall. Although actually I might have a solution. 4 sets of eyes, compound, gelatinous, crystalline, and Vextor's own, fixed on the human. You have a secret food supply? Vextor asked. Better. I can make food. Silence. The kind of silence that occurs when someone says something so fundamentally absurd that reality itself needs a moment to process. Make food, Vextor repeated slowly. You mean synthesize it? No, I mean make it, cook it. You know, with ingredients and heat and actual preparation. Plesic's containment suit rippled. But that's primitive. Nobody's manually prepared food in millennia. Humans do. Well, some of us. I grew up helping my grandmother in her restaurant. Marcus grinned. She always said cooking was an art. The galaxy said it was obsolete. Guess we're about to find out who was right. Rothmak's voice rumbled through the comm. You want to create edible matter through pre-industrial combustion-based heat application. On my ship? Technically, it's the captain's ship. I will throw you into space. After I feed you, probably. Marcus was already moving toward the cargo bay. Captain, permission to raid our cargo and not starve to death. Vextor's mandibles clicked in what might have been the Krillian equivalent of hysterical laughter or a complete mental breakdown. Possibly both. Granted. If this kills us, I'm noting your insubordination in the ship's log. Fair. The cargo hold was a cathedral of containers, stacked 30 meters high in precise magnetic suspension. Marcus moved through them with his portable scanner, humming something that Vextor's translator refused to process. Apparently humans still made ritualistic vocalizations for entertainment, another baffling cultural quirk. Container 47, Marcus muttered, checking his scanner. Protein blocks intended for colony synthesizers. Not processed yet, still in raw form. He moved left. Container 92, hydroponic vegetables for the Martian settlements. They're in stasis but still fresh. Another turn. Container 118, spice compounds from Rigel Ferv, marked as aromatic curiosities for xenobiology research. He looked up at Vextor, who'd followed him down. Captain, we're accidentally hauling a grocery store. Those are industrial materials and research specimens. They're ingredients. Trust me. What followed violated approximately 47 safety regulations, 3 interstellar shipping laws, and every instinct Vextor had developed over 2 decades of space travel. Marcus cleared a section of the cargo bay floor, set up a metal platform from disassembled container supports, and then, while Rothmak watched through security feeds and made sounds of religious horror, the human produced a plasma torch from the engineering supplies. Webb, Vextor said carefully, you are not starting a fire on my ship. I'm starting a very controlled, well-monitored fire on your ship. There's a difference. The difference being what, exactly? Intention and safety protocols. Marcus adjusted the plasma torch to low output, placed it beneath a metal grate he'd constructed, and ignited it. Actual flames, orange and yellow, and dancing with primitive energy, appeared in the cargo hold of the Prophet's Edge. Plesic screamed. It was a wet, gurgling scream that echoed off the containers. It's contained, Marcus called out. See? Metal platform, heat shielding underneath. Ventilation rotated through the atmospheric processes. "Rothmak, you're monitoring temperature." "I'm monitoring my imminent unemployment when this ship explodes." Rothmak growled, but his sensors showed green. "Temperature stable. Atmospheric composition normal. I hate that this is working." Fire, open combustion. The thing civilized species had moved beyond when they developed fusion power and matter replication. The tool of primitives, the mark of species still climbing from their caves. And here it was, burning merrily in a cargo hold while the human arranged metal containers above it, like some sort of ritual altar. Marcus opened container 47 and extracted blocks of compressed protein. They were meant to be processed into nutrition paste, but in their raw state, they resembled pale meat, which Vextor realized with discomfort was essentially what they were: synthesized muscle tissue, grown in vats, perfectly uniform. The human placed them on the hot metal surface. They began to sizzle. The smell hit Vextor's olfactory receptors like a physical force. It was wrong. It was alien. It triggered something in his genetic memory that screamed danger and hunger in the same primal voice. The protein was changing color, browning, and the scent intensified. Complex molecules breaking down and recombining. The Maillard reaction creating hundreds of aromatic compounds that had no business existing in a sterile cargo hauler. "What is that?" Plezik whispered, their gelatinous form pressing against the observation window. "That's cooking," Marcus said. He opened container 92 and pulled out vegetables, green stalks, orange roots, red bulbs, and began cutting them with a utility knife. "You're smelling protein and sugars caramelizing. Chemical reactions, flavor development. The foundation of every civilization's cuisine, back before we decided efficiency was more important than enjoyment." He added the vegetables to another heated surface. They hissed and steamed. He opened container 118 and sprinkled dark powder over everything. The spices, their aromatic compounds volatilizing in the heat, filling the cargo bay with scents that Vextor's brain couldn't categorize. Marcus worked with practiced efficiency, flipping the protein, stirring the vegetables, adjusting heat and timing with instincts that looked like magic to species that had forgotten food could be anything but gray blocks. He talked while he worked, explaining each step as if teaching children. "The key is understanding heat and time. Too much heat, you burn it. Carbon formation, bitter compounds. Too little, you don't get the browning reactions, no flavor development. You want that sweet spot where proteins denature, sugars caramelize, and everything becomes more than the sum of its parts." "This is insane," Rothmak said through the comm. "We have a cooking human. We're being saved by culinary alchemy." "Alchemy implies it's mystical," Marcus replied. "This is just chemistry. Delicious, delicious chemistry." 20 minutes after he started, Marcus plated the results on cleaned metal containers. 4 portions. The protein was browned and glistening. The vegetables were tender and colorful. The smell had evolved into something that made Vextor's mandibles water involuntarily. A physiological response he didn't know he was capable of experiencing. "Gentle beings," Marcus announced with dramatic flair. "Dinner is served." Nobody moved. 3 crew members stared at the prepared food with expressions ranging from fascination to existential horror. This wasn't a nutrition block. This was food, actual, prepared, cooked food, the kind of thing their species had abandoned when they achieved civilization. "Captain," Plezik said quietly, "this violates approximately 16 health and safety protocols." "So does starving," Vextor replied. "Webb, if this kills me, I'm haunting you. You'll haunt me well-fed at least." Vextor approached the plate. The food radiated heat. Steam rose from it. He could identify the components: protein, vegetables, spices, but they'd been transformed into something entirely different. His evolutionary instinct screamed warnings about contamination and unknown pathogens. His rational mind calculated their limited options. He picked up the protein with his manipulator claw and brought it to his mandibles. The texture was wrong. Not uniform, not processed, rough edges and crispy surfaces and tender interior. He bit down, and the piece separated with resistance. And then, actual, undeniable, overwhelming flavor. His sensory receptors, designed to detect basic nutritional compounds, were suddenly processing complexity they'd never encountered. Salt and fat and caramelized proteins and spice notes that ranged from sweet to sharp to something his translator database called umami and couldn't properly explain. The food had texture, varying densities, crunchy edges, soft centers. It had temperature that added to the experience. It had identity. Every nutrition block he'd ever consumed suddenly felt like a personal betrayal. "By the hive," Vexthor whispered. "What is this?" "That's a pan-seared protein steak with roasted root vegetables and a Regalian spice rub," Marcus said, grinning. "Medium well, because I wasn't sure about Krillian food safety standards." "How is it?" Vexthor consumed the rest of his portion in silence. Not because he couldn't speak, but because speaking would require stopping eating, and that suddenly seemed impossible. Pleasic tried theirs next. The Glothian absorbed food through osmosis, but the heated proteins and vegetables dissolved into their gelatinous form, and their entire body flickered through colors: surprise orange, confusion purple, pleasure pink, more pleasure pink, aggressive pleasure pink, that suggested Glothian biology was experiencing something profound. "This is obscene," Pleasic said, colors still flickering. "This is barbaric. This is the most wonderful thing I've ever experienced, and I'm having a philosophical crisis about my entire civilization's choices." Rothmak emerged from engineering specifically to eat. The stone vein consumed through chemical absorption, placing food against specialized patches on his rocky hide. The proteins and vegetables broke down, and even his mineral-based biology responded to the complexity. "I've been eating synthesized mineral supplements for 40 cycles, Rothmak said quietly. "I thought that was food. This is what food is supposed to be." Marcus sat with his own portion, eating casually as if he hadn't just upended 3 crew members' entire understanding of nutrition and civilization. "My grandmother used to say that synthesizers gave you sustenance, but cooking gave you life." Guess the old lady knew what she was talking about. "Why?" Vexthor asked. "Why did humans keep this practice when every other species abandoned it?" Marcus shrugged. "Cultural preservation, partly. Some humans think efficiency isn't everything. We like rituals. We like art. Cooking is both. It's chemistry and creativity. It's following recipes from ancestors and experimenting with new combinations. It's sharing something you made with people you care about." He gestured at the makeshift kitchen. "Plus, it tastes better. That's a pretty good reason." "The galaxy will think we're insane," Pleasic said. "The galaxy already thinks humans are insane," Marcus replied. "At least now we're insane and well-fed." The next 21 days passed in a haze of aromatic chemistry and culinary discovery. Marcus cooked twice daily, transforming industrial cargo into meals that shouldn't exist outside primitive cultures. He taught the crew to help. Pleasic learned to prep vegetables with their pseudopods. Rothmak discovered he could season food by grinding mineral supplements into powder, and Vexthor found himself actually looking forward to mealtimes instead of treating them as biological necessity. They ate around the fire, because Marcus kept it burning, claiming something about ambiance, and talked. Actual conversation, not just operational briefings. Marcus told stories about Earth restaurants and family gatherings. Vextor shared Krillian legends about the ancient hive times. Plesic discussed Glorthian philosophy. Rothmak complained about everything, but with notably less hostility than usual. The food kept them alive, but the ritual of shared meals did something else entirely. It created community in a vessel designed for impersonal efficiency. Marcus experimented with combinations. Protein with sweet glazes made from cargo container lubricant that was technically edible if properly processed. Nobody asked questions because it tasted amazing. Vegetables roasted until crispy. Something he called stew that involved combining everything in a heated container with liquid and waiting, which tested everyone's patience but delivered flavor that made the wait worthwhile. "I request the spicy variant tomorrow," Vextor announced during one meal. "The captain has a favorite," Marcus observed. "That's adorable. I will dock your pay." "You can't dock my pay. We're all going to starve without me cooking." "Valid point. Make it extra spicy." They arrived at Outpost Kestrel on day 28, right on schedule. The dockmaster performed standard inspection, scanning for contamination and safety violations, and kept pausing with confused expressions. "Your crew's biometric readings are unusual," she said to Vextor. "Elevated serotonin across the board, enhanced muscle mass, improved gut flora. Are you running some experimental supplement program?" "Something like that," Vextor replied. "The cargo delivered fine. Payment transferred. The Prophet's Edge resupplied, including a new synthesizer system that Rothmak installed with notable lack of enthusiasm." "Guess we're back to grey blocks," Plesic said sadly. "Guess not," Marcus replied, loading personal supplies into his quarters. Bags of ingredients, portable cooking equipment, spices. "I'm crew, aren't I? Crew gets fed properly." "Webb," Vextor said carefully, "are you suggesting we continue this arrangement?" "I'm suggesting that I cook and you eat actual food instead of compressed sadness. Unless you'd prefer to go back to nutrition blocks." The silence answered that question. Word spread through the hauler community. The Prophet's Edge boring cargo vessel, nothing special, had a human who cooked. Other captains heard rumors. Crew members shared experiences in station bars. Someone recorded Marcus preparing a meal and uploaded it to the Galactic Net, where it went viral with confused fascination. "Is that fire? Why is there fire? They're destroying perfectly good nutrition blocks. I watched this for 3 minutes, and now I'm hungry for something that doesn't exist." Anthropology professors cited it as evidence of human cultural retention. Efficiency advocates called it dangerous regression. Food historians emerged from academic obscurity to declare a renaissance. And quietly, in personal quarters across the galaxy, some individuals began experimenting with heating elements and raw ingredients. 6 months later, 3 restaurants serving traditionally prepared meals opened in the Outer Rim. By cycle's end, that number reached 47. Species that had forgotten taste began remembering. The synthesizer industry maintained that nutrition blocks remained the optimal solution, while quietly panic auditing their market projections. Vextor started a waiting list for crew positions. Everyone wanted to serve on the ship with the cooking human. He hired nobody. His current crew was perfect, though he'd never admit it aloud. Marcus continued hauling cargo and preparing meals, amused by the chaos his grandmother's recipes had unleashed on galactic civilization. Humans had arrived in the galaxy without superior weapons, advanced engines, or revolutionary technology. They'd brought something far more dangerous. They'd brought flavor back to the universe. And the universe, having remembered what it had been missing, would never be satisfied with grey blocks again. Somewhere, in a station-side apartment, Plezik attempted to cook solo for the first time. The results were objectively terrible, but they were terrible in a way that tasted like effort and experimentation and hope. They ate every bite.